Welcome to another explainer from the Global Issues Daily. Today we're diving into an incredible story of human engineering pitted directly against the relentless, unforgiving forces of nature. We're examining a country that honestly, according to all the laws of nature, well, it shouldn't even exist as land at all.
Just imagine this. You step off a plane, joining the tens of millions of passengers who travel through Schiphol International Airport every single year. You grab your bags, walk out the front doors, and you're actually standing at the bottom of a former lake. You are exactly 4 meters below the surface of the ocean.
And that brings us to the stark, inescapable reality of this geography. If, for whatever reason, one day all the water pumps in this country were to just shut off, within days, this entire nation simply becomes the sea floor. The ocean would just reclaim it all. Take a second to really let the sheer existential stakes of that sink in.
The geographic reality here is pretty staggering. A full third of the Netherlands lies below sea level, with its lowest point dropping nearly 7 meters beneath the waves. Without its massive network of defenses, a whopping 2/3 of the country would regularly flood. And yet, despite these terrifying statistics, nearly 18 million people live here. The country boasts thriving cities, incredibly fertile fields, and it stands as one of the wealthiest nations on Earth. So how do they do it?
Section 1. Building an artificial land.
It's been a 1,000-year battle. 2,000 years ago, the original inhabitants didn't actually fight the water. They simply built manual dirt mounds, called terps, to literally lift their houses above the tides. But about 1,000 years ago, they went on the offensive and constructed the first dikes. And crucially, these dikes birthed the waterboards. See, because the dike protects everyone behind it, communities absolutely had to work together. These waterboards are the oldest democratic institutions in the Netherlands. They're actually older than the state itself, and people still vote for their water managers today. By the 15th century, they'd leveled up, using vast chains of windmills to actively drain entire lakes. Which brings us to the very core mechanism of Dutch survival, the polder. A polder is a tract of lowland reclaimed from the water and enclosed by dikes. But the absolute most critical element of a polder is that it has to be perpetually drained by pumps without a single day off. Seriously, you can never, ever stop pumping. But of course, there's a catch. We can call it a sinking paradox. The original soil was essentially a giant wet sponge made of peat. So as they drained the water out, the peat dried, shrank, and the land actually sank even lower. It's a brutal, vicious cycle. The better you drain the land, the lower it sinks, and the harder your pumps have to work to keep you dry.
Section 2. The 1953 catastrophe.
For centuries, they somehow managed this incredibly delicate balance. But then came the night of February 1st, 1953. A violent hurricane-force storm collided with a high spring tide in the North Sea. The water rose several meters above normal, and in the pitch-black dead of night, the aging dikes, which had been weakened by years of war and underfunding, gave way in dozens of places. Freezing, violent water suddenly rushed into sleeping villages, trapping families in their attics as their old brick homes literally crumbled beneath them.
The toll of this flood was absolutely devastating. Over 1,800 human lives were lost, tens of thousands of livestock perished, and hundreds of thousands of people were left entirely homeless in an instant. With telephone lines completely severed, the only lifeline for these isolated, drowning communities was a network of amateur radio operators. They stayed awake for days, broadcasting desperate pleas for a global rescue.
Now you might know the famous story of the little Dutch boy plugging a leaky dike with his finger. Well, scratch that. That is entirely an American fiction from a 19th century children's novel. It's physically impossible anyway. The water pressure would just wash the hole wider. No, the real heroism of 1953 looked very different. When a massive breach threatened to flood the heavily populated heartland, a local mayor convinced a quick-thinking skipper to deliberately jam his own massive barge directly into the roaring breach. The ship wedged tight, stopped the flow of water, and saved millions of lives. That right there, that is gritty, practical Dutch engineering in a crisis.
Section 3. The Delta Works.
This unimaginable tragedy prompted a historic national vow. This would never happen again, no matter the cost. The resulting mega project, called the Delta Works, introduced a radically new philosophy of safety, anchored by this massive number, 10,000. In the Netherlands, the core dikes protecting the most populated areas are now built to withstand a 1 in 10,000 year storm. Just think about that scale for a moment. The last time a storm of that magnitude hit, humanity hadn't even invented writing yet. For context, most countries build defenses for maybe a 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 year event. This is an absolutely unmatched global standard.
Take the Oosterschelde barrier, for example. Originally, engineers planned to build a solid, cheap dam right across the estuary, but local fishermen and a young ecological movement heavily protested. They knew a solid dam would permanently kill the area's unique tidal ecosystem. So they struck a compromise. They spent drastically more money to build a massive, movable barrier instead. The gates stay open normally to preserve the tides, the oysters, and the seals, but they drop down the moment a storm approaches. It represents one of the first times in history a megaproject was redesigned purely to protect local ecology. Then there's the Maasland Kering, which protects the massive port of Rotterdam. Picture this, 2 automated, floating steel gates, each the size of the Eiffel Tower lying on its side. Because human error, like the temptation to wait just a little bit longer before shutting down Europe's biggest port, is simply too risky. These colossal gates are entirely controlled by computers. When a surge is detected, they automatically float out, fill with water, sink to the bottom, and completely seal off the city.
Beyond just defense, they literally redrew the map. They dammed off an entire inland sea, the Zuiderzee, and pumped it totally dry to create Flevoland. It's the largest artificial island on Earth. Today, hundreds of thousands of people live there. And here is a truly surreal reality for you. When farmers plow their wheat, or those famous tulip fields today, they regularly strike the oak hulls of medieval fishing boats and Golden Age galleons. They are literally farming on top of a massive maritime graveyard.
Section 4. Room for the river.
After 1,000 years of fighting water by building higher and higher walls, engineers finally realized the cold, hard truth. You can't build infinite walls against rising oceans and stronger river floods. The higher the wall, the more catastrophic it is when it fails. So, they initiated a massive paradigm shift. Now, they're actually moving dikes inland, surrendering hard-won land back to nature, and deliberately flooding specific polders to act as pressure relief valves for swelling rivers. Basically, they're negotiating with the water rather than just fighting it.
They're also adapting how they actually live, using some incredibly innovative floating architecture. Entire new neighborhoods are being built on platforms attached to giant poles. So when the water level rises during a storm or a flood, the houses don't flood. They simply slide up the poles, rising and falling with the water exactly like a ring on a finger. It cleverly treats rising water as a dynamic feature of the landscape instead of an existential threat. And they're letting nature do the heavy lifting too. Instead of constantly deploying noisy, expensive machinery to replenish eroding beaches, they built something called the sand motor. It's a single, massive, artificial peninsula made entirely of sand. They just leave it there, and the ocean's own natural currents slowly distribute that sand along the coast over the years, naturally reinforcing the beaches. It's brilliant.
Section 5. A blueprint for the world.
Now, why does this matter to all of us? Because this highly specific history is deeply relevant to the global climate reality we're all facing today. Right now, Dutch expertise is one of their most vital exports. When New York or New Orleans look to protect themselves from super hurricanes, or when places like Jakarta, Venice, Vietnam, or Bangladesh face rising oceans, the Netherlands is the very first place they call. The Dutch are actively designing the blueprints for coastal survival across the globe.
But for the Dutch themselves, the reality at home remains absolutely relentless. There's this brilliant quote that perfectly sums it up. The Netherlands is a bicycle that only exists as long as you keep pedaling. They can never, ever stop pumping. Their survival requires endless, daily, meticulous maintenance.
Which brings us to a final, rather haunting question. If those automated gates fail, if the massive pumps ever lose power and stop, how long until the map resets? Well, the engineers know the answer. Within days, the lowlands would fill up like a bathtub. Within a few years, the map of Europe would roll back 1,000 years, and the sea would take back everything it ever lost. It really is a fragile, miraculous testament to human ingenuity. Thank you so much for watching this explainer from the Global Issues Daily. If you value these kinds of deep dives into the forces shaping our world, please make sure to subscribe and like the video. Until next time,